I'm Jazz, and this is All That Jazz Recovery Podcast. I talk all things recovery. I am a mother. I am an entrepreneur. I've worked in trades for 16 years. I have one of my children is on the spectrum. And as a person that is working in recovery, I know a lot about behavior. And it also interests me. So becoming recovered from addiction, and I don't have to just be from an addiction to recover from anything. I can just be a person that wants to change. And so I have to start developing boundaries. When I have things like, when I start figuring out my needs, my wants, when I start figuring out what my boundaries are, when I start doing this like self-esteem work, I start to get closer to having the life that I want one day. But it comes with taking responsibility for myself. And one way to take responsibility for myself is actually to create boundaries and to stick to them. I make a boundary for me is non-negotiable. It does not mean that my boundaries are something for people to decide that we should whittle them down and negotiate them today. So it's better to include what they think and need in that boundary. When I make a boundary, it is my personal boundary for me. That's it. This is to protect my own safety, my own needs, to help keep my soul thriving and safe in this world. So it's very personal, my boundaries. And I think people get scared to make boundaries because it feels mean. It feels like you're going to hurt someone, or what are they going to think of me? And you know what? Boundaries does make people a little bit angry. It's definitely going to come with some whiplash. Brace yourself. People don't like it when you make boundaries. And, over the years, I've been practicing with making more and more boundaries and working through people's reactions and facing that over and over. I am less bothered now when people are having reactions for my boundaries. It does go away. They do get over it. If they're really not going to get over it, does that person really need to be in my life? Do I really want to have them around all the time? Is this a good relationship for me? That's going to be kind of a struggle if all the time I have a boundary and they're not okay with it. I'm not asking them to be okay with it, but that might add some unnecessary strain and might affect my peace to have that person around, say, often. So my boundaries are for me. And there's a lot to boundaries. There's the boundary book on boundaries, and I read that, and that was a huge tool for me to really know the ins and outs about boundaries. There are internal boundaries, external boundaries. There are boundaries on finances, how you speak, how much time you need off. Like there's so many boundaries out there, and when I start making boundaries, I start creating the perimeter around myself where there's some separation, where like this is who I am. Like this is what's okay with me. This is what's not okay with me. And I start identifying where I need boundaries and creating that. And that starts letting other people know where my limits are, what I'm about. It starts to create some identity with myself. And I am happier and more peaceful since starting these boundaries. And before I was so insecure and felt unsafe all the time. And I was just like constantly taking everything personally because everything went across my boundaries because I didn't have any boundaries. I was just like chaotic, I didn't have separation between my feelings and thoughts. Like there was no separation for a lot of things in my life, but boundaries really started to separate things for myself. And it lets people know, right? It's clear, but it's hard because people are going to be upset with those boundaries. And they say to start small, like start with friends or with acquaintances, or sticking up for yourself in little places. And as you get stronger, you get closer to the middle, to where family of origin is, where you're in more difficult situations, like maybe with your boss or with your husband or wife. Like it takes time to kind of start creating those boundaries from the outside, and you move to the middle, to the center, where things are getting a little bit more touchy, a little more, maybe there's some more triggers, maybe there's some history, and until you're really strong, you can start operating in those places. But boundaries isn't something where you just come out and start swinging and being like, this is where my line is, and that's that, and getting all aggressive. It's just starting to kind of like start with your little no's and yeses, and like, and deciding things for yourself, and like putting things at certain times, like, you know, really deciding how your life should look like, and then creating all those little boundaries and perimeters, like, which is just creating a huge, like, perimeter of identity for yourself. And that is where the freedom is. And that's, and then it's like, I'm learning about myself, what I'm okay with. Like, I'm paying attention to what my signals are and how I'm reacting to the world. And then I'm acting on that. Boundaries is, you know, the internal, the external. And also when it comes to a boundary, I make my boundary because I figured out, you know, maybe I'm having an uncomfortable feeling. I need a boundary here. Like, usually there's a feeling, and then it's like this calls for a boundary. So now I'm at this point where I'm like, hey, I need a boundary here. And if other people are involved, I need to lay out a consequence to that person and state that consequence, and then follow through with it. The boundary doesn't count if I don't have that part to it. The boundary doesn't count if I just say, I don't like that you're late. You know, what I should be saying is, I need you here at this time, or this is going to happen. And I tell that person. I don't just say, I need you here, and that's that. There has to be, I'll let them know what's going to happen next if they keep infringing on your boundary. People are going to not have good boundaries in your life. Like, I deal with people that don't have good boundaries themselves. And that is how I deal with that is I say my need, my boundary, the thing that I need a certain way. I say that out, and then I say the consequence of what will happen. And then I enforce that consequence, and then I move from there. If it keeps going, I judge the situation by the next time. I really wait for a lot of proof to happen before I just go down the rabbit hole with everything. Because living in that anxiety in the future isn't going to do anything for me right now. Like, I'm talking about present moment. So I had this incident where this is an external boundary. I was going to go out for dinner with my folks. My mother starts getting in a fight with my dad, and I'm feeling super uncomfortable. I'm feeling like I'm 5 years old, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't want to sit through dinner with this big fight going on. So something was going on with my mother. She was being triggered by something. She was not okay. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but she had her own stuff going on. So I nicely said to her, I said, I just need to talk to you for a moment. And I pulled her aside because I care and I'm respectful. That's the way I want to operate. So I talk to her quietly and I say, if this is going to continue, for me, I think that I will have to pass on dinner tonight, because I don't think I just can't sit through that for dinner. But if it's going to be like a nice dinner and like we could wrap up the fighting here or whatever, maybe you guys could save that conversation for later, then I'm really happy to sit with you. And I say what I'm going to do. I say that if it continues, I'm going to leave, or if it is going to continue, I'm actually not going to engage and come sit with you guys tonight. And that is my choice, my ownership, my responsibility. I'm taking care of myself. I'm taking care of my own safety and my own needs. You know, I look forward to this, but not if this is just going to be me on the sidelines watching my folks have a fight. You know, that's not okay with me. I'm not changing their relationship in their life. I'm just taking part of myself and deciding what I'm going to do with myself, because I'm only in control of me. I'm not in control of everything, but I can say what I can do and what I'm not going to do if this is like this or like that and what I'm going to do. That is how I make a boundary. That is an external boundary. An internal boundary, like one that I really, and this also helps build self-esteem, like boundaries helps build self-esteem. And I can contest to that because I have a lot more self-esteem today than I used to. But one of these internal boundaries is I used to believe what everybody would say about me and worry about what they'd say and then would defend the thing that was said. And I would waste all my own energy on something that I can't control. So I said, I'm going to hear the thing and I'm not going to believe it. I'm not believing it anymore. I already know my truth. To thy own self be true. As in, if this is my truth that I think this about me, then that's the truth I'm going to go with. I'm not going to go with, oh, I can't, like they've said that about me. I better go correct it. I better go, I can't believe they said that. And I used to own that and take all that in. And I had to stop doing that. So I was called to make an internal boundary to help protect myself because I'm in charge of me. I am setting up these property lines in my life. So boundaries is a huge act of taking responsibility. Say I'm trying to rely on someone for, this happened to me years ago. One of the grandparents would always want to come and take the grandkids. Totally cool. Like it was so great. It was such a great idea and it was so tempting. And I did try that for a long time. But this person would not show up or would cancel last minute. And it was, it was a fair weathered situation. Like things only worked out when it was fair weathered. And so I had to get real with myself and be like, this is not working out. But I constantly would rely on that person to show up and then I would get all bent because they didn't show up or they canceled. And it would completely screw up my next few days because I was unprepared for the child care. I had to cancel the things that I set up and I would get very upset with this thing. So I created another boundary. I stopped relying on that person for that crucial time off. And we just stick to the time that she has with her son for the grandkids. So I've changed that and that changed my peace. That took that whole ball of chaos that I was always trying to make time for her and make time for the kids and make this happen for them. And it was all my energy that I was spending to get them to do this thing because I needed that time off, but I was going to not a very reliable source to get that met. So I had to make a boundary. I had to stop asking that person for that. That was my responsibility. I made that boundary and I stopped asking that person and go to where it is reliable. I go to where things are happening when they say. I'm going to trusted places to get something that's vital to me for my own self-worth and survival. So boundaries really cleans up my entire life. And I have boundaries everywhere for everything. And some people who don't have boundaries are going to be like, oh, you're so strict, or what we have to be like there every time this day at that time. And people who don't have very strong boundaries are going to scoff at boundaries. Whatever. Who cares? They can stay and live in that ball of chaos. That's fine. There's actually great freedom in having boundaries and having things in certain ways. There's always room for a little bit of shifting and for life to happen, but in that structure is freedom. And knowing what is coming and knowing what's next and working with people that are respective of those boundaries. That's a healthier relationship for me. Not working with people who don't respect my boundaries, keep messing them up, and it's just a battle. I'm getting away from that battle. And if that battle is there, I move with my boundaries. I move with my actions around that person, but I don't get them to be a certain way and show up at a certain time or show up in a certain way. I don't expect that anymore from them. I just go, what can I do? How do I manage this? How do I operate this? And if it's too unmanageable, then I must accept that. Like step one, like I need to make a change here. Like with the grandparent, the first one, I had to step one it and be like, this is not working out. It doesn't matter how I slice it and how I arrange it. Like, I had to come to terms. Like, this is not working out. Like, wake up, Jazz. Like, come on. And so I just went cold turkey, and I was like, I just need to restart, like, set up resource. It was hard for a while. I had to set up different resources for that time off. And then, sometimes I might have to pay for it. So I had to find some work to pay for that. So there was like an adjustment period, because I knew that I wanted to be open to the kids going there, and I wanted to have some time off, but trying to get it from someone that wasn't showing that they could do that, and then I'm getting all mad about that. It wasn't really about her. It wasn't really about her not showing up and getting mad at her. It's just that I was going to the wrong place. So, another act of like really getting accountable, it is figuring out those boundaries. And that's huge for self-esteem building, is having boundaries, having priorities. And I love working with that, because it's like tangible, it's concrete, it works. And instead of just getting all emotional and mad at everybody for everything because they're not, adhering and working with me on stuff, I just change it up a bit for me. I make the changes where I need to make them, and that leaves them alone. I'm getting them out of the whole story there, just figuring out what I can do, working with that, finding those dependable people, trustworthy people. And I'm making boundaries all the time. Like if I'm trying to get to a meeting and I'm always late for the certain thing, I just gotta like wind it right back. Like, what's a better time that I could be leaving? What do I need to cut out so that I get out of the door faster? Do I need to eat on the road? Like, I start figuring out, like, when that time comes, when I got to go and I'm getting late, I just start cutting things out and then taking what's the priority now? What's the biggest priority now to help me get out the door? Do I really need to fill that water bottle up? Chuck it. I'll just grab one, like a bottle of water that's in the car. Maybe I'll put a flat of water bottles in the car. Like, I'm just changing it all up so that I can meet those goals for myself. Whenever I meet goals for myself, I stick to my boundaries consistently, I really work on those healthy priorities, I feel so much better about myself, because I'm getting taken care of by me. And then I become dependable on myself, which gives me so much strength in the world to operate wherever I want to go now. Because I'm now a strong unit. I'm a reliable unit. I depend on me. And I have certain people that I can depend on. But I'm not expecting that everyone is dependable and can all fall in line exactly the way I want them to. I have to really comb through and go through all of those connections, all of those responsibilities and appointments and things I need and don't need. And I have to do all that work of deciding and then owning the thing for what it is, like, and then deciding, yeah, I do need this. And, my limit is this, if my, uncle says too many bad words in front of my kids, it's like, hey, like, could you please watch your language? If you don't watch your language, like, we're just going to go eat in the other room, or we're going to go. But I'd really love to stay here for dinner. It's just, I don't appreciate that kind of language around my kids. He gets upset about that, but it's like, it's really tough for me to have to deal with that language later in the car on the way home. Like, I'm a one-woman show here. So, I don't need him to understand. And I used to need them to understand. Instead, it's just like, I say the thing, like, it's like a default pattern now. Like, I just say the thing, like, hey, could you do this? If you don't do this, I'm going to leave. Could you do this? If this is this way, it's fine. Like, we'll go in the other room, or I'll get my kids to go in the other room, but I know that I don't want to sit there the whole time and then have to explain 5 swear words later to my kids. Like, that's just not idea of having a nice dinner. And you know what? I could just eventually, not come there for that time when they're there. You know, like, I know it sucks. It sucks because I want to be there. But that's where I have to just start being like, this isn't good for us right now. That's it. It's not to make sure that he starts speaking better all the time. It's just that maybe we shouldn't be going for dinner there as often. And that's that. Like, and I do that with all sorts of situations in my life. And I'm no one special. This is common knowledge out there. But I've been working it and I've seen it. It gives me a lot of freedom in my life today. Having boundaries, stating those consequences, and having lots of like internal boundaries and external boundaries. And then just, notice the feeling, notice what I need for a boundary here. Something reasonable, not extreme. And I can start with boundaries like in the rooms, and I can start with like out there with people that I don't really know as much, like start working that muscle with little boundaries until I get really closer and confident to be working closer to those intimate relationships in my life where it's scary to make those decisions. It's scary to say no to my boss. I don't want to work on a Saturday. It's scary to say no to my partner that, I need to go to the grocery store by myself tonight without anyone. It's scary, I found, in those kind of relationships. But I worked from the outside in, and I worked small, and then I got stronger and I got stronger, but and then I stayed consistent with it, and I listened to my body and my heart and my mind, and as I got closer to feeling like ready to say some of those awkward boundaries, I started to do that. But even when I started with those intimate situations, I still felt scared. I still didn't like it. Like I'm not immune to feeling like uncomfortable. Like I still feel uncomfortable, and it's like, but I got to go through it because I have to stick up for me. They're not going to point out my needs and boundaries for me. I got to point them out. I got to line them up. And then that's how I'm going to get the freedom in my life. So that's just a bit on boundaries, you guys. So thank you for being here, and see you at the next one. Bye.